It was just past midnight when Jake pulled his beat-up Honda into a gravel lot beside Still River. The summer heat had been brutal, and word around Bethel was that the old swimming hole was the only place to cool off without dealing with crowds. He grabbed his flashlight and headed down the familiar trail, branches scraping against his arms in the darkness. The water looked black as oil under the moonlight, but Jack didn't give a shit. He'd been swimming here since he was 12. That's when he heard it. A low, guttural croaking sound, but wrong somehow. Too deep, too human. Jake swept his flashlight across the water and froze. About 20 feet out, something was watching him. The beam caught a massive, lemon-shaped head with eyes positioned on the sides like a fish. Patchy, wet hair clung to the pale skin that looked almost translucent in the light. The damn thing didn't move, just stared with those unblinking side eyes, its mouth slightly open. Jake's hand trembled as he kept the light trained on the creature. It was about 5 feet tall, standing waist deep in the murky water, its thin arms hanging at weird angles. Then it smiled. But what Jake encountered that night in 1999 wasn't just some local legend. It was evidence of something far more dark. Shit the government has been covering up for over a century. What's up, folks? Uncle Perry here, ready to dig into this massive shit show. Jesus Christ. Y'all, get settled in because we're about to dive into one of Connecticut's most fucked up cryptid legends, the Danbury Frog People. Now, I've covered my fair share of bizarre monsters lurking in America's dark corners, but these goddamn things, they're on another level. I'm talking about the shadowy woods of Fairfield County, specifically around Bethel and Danbury, where witnesses have been reporting encounters with humanoid creatures that'll make your sister's spring break video seem like Disney+. Picture this: beings with large, lemon-shaped heads and bulging eyes positioned way too far apart on their faces. We're talking stretched, almost translucent skin that looks like it's been pulled tight over their skulls. Their noses sunken in with just slits for nostrils, giving them that distinctly amphibian look. These guys have thin, crusty lips stretched across unnaturally wide mouths. Some witnesses describe patchy hair scattered across their oversized heads, while others report seeing them with normal hair but faces so stretched and distorted they barely look human anymore. Their bodies are thin and gangly, almost skeletal. And here's the creepy ass kicker. They're often spotted wearing what appears to be old Salvation Army clothing, like they're trying to fucking blend in with society. The timeline of these sightings is fascinating as hell. We've got encounters dating back to the early 1900s, passed down through generations of locals who know better than to fuck around in certain parts of the woods after dark. But it wasn't until 1998 that these creatures burst into the mainstream consciousness, thanks to a newspaper article that finally gave people permission to talk about what the hell they'd been seeing for decades. Fast forward to today, and social media has amplified these encounters like fucking crazy. Modern witnesses are sharing photos, videos, and detailed accounts that match descriptions from nearly a damn century ago. The consistency is mind-blowing and terrifying. So, what the hell are these froggers? Where did they come from? Are they the result of some twisted, fucked up experiment? Environmental contamination? Or something far more sinister? Hold on to your ass. We're gonna dig deeper into this mystery than anyone has dared to go before. And what I uncover might just change how you think about Connecticut's dark history forever. Let's dig into the dark history that created these creatures. Because what happened in Danbury wasn't just industrial negligence. It was a century-long poisoning that the government knew about and didn't do shit to stop it. Back in the 1780s, Danbury was known as the Hat City of the world. We're talking about a booming industry that employed thousands of workers, all of them handling one of the most toxic substances known to man, mercury nitrate. This shit was essential for turning animal fur into felt, but it came with a deadly price. The hat-making process was brutal. Workers would soak rabbit and beaver pelts in mercury solutions, then shape them with their bare hands. Day after day, year after year, these people were breathing mercury vapors and absorbing it through their skin. The effects were fucking horrible. Tremors, tooth loss, personality changes, and severe neurological damage. Sound familiar? This is where the phrase, mad as a hatter, comes from. But it gets even darker. The mercury didn't just stay in the factories. The mercury runoff was poured directly into the Still River system, the same waterways where the frog people are spotted today. We're talking about over 160 years of continuous contamination, with mercury and river sediments reaching levels higher than your mom gets off boxed wine and Xanax during the Bachelor finale. The government knew. Oh, fuck yeah, they did. Several industrial reports from the 1800s documented worker deaths and environmental damage. However, they said, damn the reports, and production continued until 1941. That's over a century of deliberate poisoning, and the effects of the mercury don't just disappear when you shut down the factories. Then there's Fairfield Hills State Hospital, opened in 1931, right in the heart of this contaminated shit zone. This wasn't just any mental institution. It was a straight-up house of horrors where patients underwent experimental electroshock therapy, insulin shock treatments, and regular lobotomies. The hospital's records describe procedures that would make your ass pucker tighter than a first-time inmate at a maximum security shower. They were all conducted on people who were already suffering from mercury-induced neurological damage. When Fairfield Hills mercifully closed in December 1995, the chaos was completely over the top. Patients were transferred in the middle of winter with minimal oversight. Some simply fucking vanished from the records entirely. The hospital had an extensive underground tunnel system connecting all the buildings. Witnesses reported seeing figures moving through these passages even after the official closure. The government's response to both crises? Cover it up. Mercury contamination reports were buried. Hospital records were sealed or destroyed, and the tunnel systems were filled with concrete. They knew exactly what they'd created in those Connecticut woods, and they've been hiding it ever since. This isn't just environmental failure. It's a systematic cover-up spanning generations. And the frog people are living fucking proof of what happens when the government and industry buddy up to prioritize profits over everything else. Long before newspapers dared to print frog people, local farmers and hunters were sharing stories around kitchen tables and dimly lit taverns. Going back to the early 1900s, old-timers swore they'd seen pale, gangly figures disappearing into the morning mist along Still River. Physical descriptions remained very goddamn consistent across decades. Lemon-shaped heads, bulging side eyes, translucent skin over skeletal frames. Encounters went into overdrive in the 1990s, right when Fairfield Hills Hospital was shutting down. Coincidence? Ha! I seriously fucking doubt it. The following are detailed accounts from highly credible witnesses who had everything to lose by going public with this information. The summer before my junior year in high school, a friend's mother was running a version of Meals on Wheels at a local church. I volunteered to help. 2 friends and I would go around Danbury door to door to give out lunches to unfortunates. One of my houses was the Frog People. They share a family name I can't remember. They wouldn't come to the door. We were told to knock on the door and leave the food there. Being mischievous kids, we would hide and wait. I never got awesome views, but the door would crack open and a hand would come out. They would snatch the food. A year later, I'm at my local grocery store around 11 p.m. with the same 2 friends. We were walking down the canned good aisle and there's a frog person. He wore penny loafers and a short-sleeved dress shirt tucked into khaki pants. He was going through the soups. We gasped. He turned and saw us, and I'll tell you what, it was not as horrific as described. His head was lemon-shaped. He had a bad lazy eye. His face was sort of stretched, and his eyes and nose looked far apart. He had sores on his very thin lips. He really did have a very froggy appearance. However, he had a normal head of hair. I'd go as far to say even pretty nice, parted on the side. He had a bobblehead sort of appearance and was very gangly. Then a girl came around the corner, blonde hair, pretty well groomed. That added some creepiness to it. If you saw them from behind, they would look normal, but if you turned one around, it's a monster. I know that sounds mean, but they did look like 2 frogs. They darted away quickly and made their way out of the aisle.
I grew up in Richfield, Connecticut. We would go to Bethel Burger King after smoking a ton of weed. We'd drive by their house and blow the horn, and they would pour out of the house with sticks. This was about 1976, and we knew them as the Frog People. Very strange looking. Big head. Eyes on the sides of their head. Almost no nose. But you know, they could probably pick your car up.
Kyle had 2 encounters with the Frog People. I live in Danbury and grew up in New Fairfield. Frog People sightings were more prevalent in the 80s. I haven't seen one in some time, but had 2 different personal interactions with them. One, coming off exit 5 at I-84, and as I was passing Gulliver Liquors, 2 of them came out of the package store, obviously very drunk. As they crossed the road with no thought to traffic, one of them fell in the middle of the road. I stopped along with a couple of other motorists and waited for the police and ambulance to arrive to help them. 2. I worked with Bob Sharp Nissan for many years back in the late 80s and 90s. A group of frog people came into the showroom. They tried to purchase a car from one of my colleagues. They were in the showroom for some time and went through the motions. We were not able to complete the transaction with them, and I never saw them after that. Here's what I know. They are the result of many years of inbreeding. Apparently, what has been told over the years, this is something the family does over and over. At least they did. I cannot say what they still do to each other. I saw one up close, very close. He was passed out in front of me. His hands were deformed, although I can't say if they were webbed. They may have been. He had enormously large eyes. He was not very clean and suffered from poor hygiene. Actually, I would say they don't practice hygiene at all. They were wearing very ratty, dirty clothes, and they looked similar. And, well, I have only seen them twice up close. The males were very different and differentiated from one another. I remember feeling very sad for one of the females, who appeared to be almost a slave. She was treated so badly by the two males she was in the showroom with. I approached them along with 3 other colleagues and warned them very sternly and very loudly that we would not sit and watch them strike her again without taking action. They were afraid of us, and they even stayed and tried to complete the transaction for the car they wanted to purchase. While I cannot ethically state why we couldn't complete the transaction, they put a fair amount of effort into it. So we were exposed to them for the better part of the afternoon. As for the one who passed out due to drunkenness near Gulliver's Liquors, I could only state that he was taken via ambulance to the hospital. I have no idea what happened afterwards. The frog people are somewhat private, but they do come out into public just like everyone else does for a variety of reasons. But the private I am referring to is their home. They all seem to reside under one roof and do not like visitors. They may get curious people looking about to catch a glimpse or two. Coming up, we're going to dig into the real meat of this mystery, because the sightings are just the surface level. What we're really dealing with here are 2 interconnected conspiracies that the government has been desperately trying to keep buried for decades. The truth is far more disturbing than any cryptid legend. Before we dive into the massively fucked up conspiracies, let's tackle the explanations, both conventional and supernatural. First up is inbreeding. Some researchers suggest that isolated communities in rural Connecticut might have developed these physical traits through generations of genetic isolation. The lemon-shaped heads, bulging eyes, and facial deformities could theoretically result from repeated intermarriage within small populations. It ain't pretty to think about, but it's biologically possible. Then there's Cruzon syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that causes premature fusion of skull bones. This condition creates enlarged heads, bulging eyes, and facial distortions that match many witness descriptions. Could these sightings simply be people with untreated medical conditions living off the grid? Maybe. But it doesn't explain the amphibian-like features or the consistent reports spanning over a century. Now we're getting into the interesting theories. Some researchers believe these creatures are alien greys. That's right, those classic extraterrestrial beings with oversized heads and large eyes. Yeah, those dudes. The theory explains they're conducting long-term observation studies near contaminated waterways, likely monitoring the effects of mercury poisoning on local ecosystems and humans. But here's where it gets even juicier. The connection to Connecticut's other cryptid legend, the melonheads. These creatures share remarkably similar physical characteristics and geographic location. Could the frog people be a new subspecies of pygmy humans, possibly evolved from the same genetic stock as the melonheads? Wouldn't fucking surprise me. The similarities are too striking to ignore. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the smoking gun behind the frog people phenomenon, and it's a conspiracy of government cover-ups and industrial negligence. From the 1780s to 1941, Danbury was poisoning an entire ecosystem, and they fucking knew it. Those hat factories weren't just making fancy headwear. They were dumping mercury nitrate directly into the Still River. It looked like a glory hole at a truck stop after Fleet Week. We're talking about 160 years of continuous contamination, with mercury levels in river sediments reaching a staggering 1,500 parts per billion. To put that into perspective, that's 500 times higher than the natural levels. The hat factory workers? Those poor folks were developing what became known as Mad Hatter disease. Tremors, drooling, severe neurological damage. Sound familiar? These are very similar symptoms described in frog people encounters. The government finally banned mercury in hat manufacturing in 1941, but the first documented frog people sightings didn't emerge until 1998. That's a 57-year gap, enough time for at least 2 generations, maybe 3, to be born and mutated in that contaminated hellhole. Here's where it gets really fucked up. Mercury doesn't just disappear, it bioaccumulates, especially in amphibians. Scientific studies have proven that mercury exposure causes birth defects, mutations, and neurological abnormalities in frogs. It generates DNA damage and creates morphological abnormalities during development. The effects are passed down through the parents, getting worse with each cycle. It's well-documented science backed by both lab experiments and real-world ecological surveys. Look at this comparison and tell me it's a fucking coincidence. Frog people have large, abnormal heads. Mercury poisoning causes microcephaly from fetal exposure. They display neurological abnormalities. Mercury causes brain damage and developmental delays. Witnesses report physical deformities. Mercury creates morphological abnormalities. They exhibit hostile, reclusive behavior. Mercury exposure causes behavioral changes. And here's the nail in the coffin. Bethel sits directly in the contaminated Stillwater Rivershed. This isn't some random location where cryptids decided to hang out and get fucked up. This is ground zero for the most extensive mercury contamination in Connecticut history. Despite cleanup efforts, mercury contamination persists in the sediments today. The timeline is too perfect to ignore. Check this shit out. Industrial mercury poisoning creates generational contamination from 1780s to 1941. The government covers up long-term effects from 1941 to 1995. Fairfield Hills Asylum closes in 1995. Were they studying the effects? Then, boom, first documented frog people sightings emerge in 1998. They don't want you connecting these dots, but the evidence is unfucking deniable. The frog people aren't some supernatural phenomenon. They're living proof of what happens when corporate greed and government negligence poison an entire ecosystem for over a century. Now here's where this story gets absolutely chilling, folks. Just 15 miles from Bethel sits the abandoned Fairfield Hills State Hospital in Newtown, and the timing of its closure is no damn coincidence. This place operated from 1931 to 1995, housing up to 4,000 patients at its peak. But calling it treatment is being ridiculously generous. We're talking about electroshock therapy administered 275 times per week, regular frontal lobotomies, and insulin shock therapy experiments that would make the Nazi angel of death, Dr. Mengele, proud. The whole complex was connected by an extensive underground tunnel network linking all 16 buildings. That detail becomes crucial here in a minute. December 8, 1995, official closure day. The state claims all patients were transferred to Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middleton. But here's the horseshit they don't want you digging into. What happened to the patients too damaged to transfer? The ones whose brains had been fried, and not in a good way, by decades of electroshock treatments and experimental procedures. Think about that fucking shit. You've got severely brain-damaged individuals who've been institutionalized for years, maybe even decades. They know those underground tunnels better than anyone. During the chaos of closure, with staff scrambling to process transfers and paperwork, how hard would it be for some of those poor souls to slip away through those tunnels and disappear into the surrounding woods? The physical evidence is totally fucked up. Witness descriptions of frog people match electroshock damage to a T. Enlarged, lemon-shaped heads from cranial swelling. Eyes positioned on the sides of their heads from facial deformity caused by electrical trauma. Patchy hair loss. Thin, gangly bodies from institutional malnutrition. And that reclusive, hostile behavior you'd completely expect from severe institutionalized trauma. The government's response? Fill in those tunnels immediately due to safety concerns. Seal all hospital records and deny everything. What a bunch of dickheads. But here's the damning evidence. Local sightings began immediately after the closure in 1995, and the first mainstream media acknowledgement of shadiness appeared in the Fairfield County Weekly in 1998. 3 years. That's how long it took these escaped patients to adapt to life off the grid before someone finally spotted them. So here we are, folks. Decades after the first sightings, and the frog people mystery is far from solved. Shit, in fact, it's getting even weirder. Reports are still trickling in, as recently as 2023. Hikers on the Still River Trail, late-night fishermen, even some brave-ass urban explorers venturing into the old industrial areas around Danbury. The descriptions remain consistent. Those same large heads, the awkward gait, that unsettling way they seem to watch from the shadows before disappearing back into the woods. What's interesting is how the landscape itself has changed. Environmental cleanup crews have been working the Still River system for years now, dredging contaminated sediments and monitoring water quality. But here's the thing about mercury. It doesn't just go away. It's damn near permanent. It settles deep into the ecosystem, working its way through the food chain for generations. The government transparency? Well, let's just say it hasn't improved much. Those sealed Fairfield Hills records are still fucking sealed. The EPA reports on mercury levels get buried in bureaucratic jargon that would put you to sleep faster than a drunk frat boy passing out mid-thrust. And shit, Don't even get me started on trying to get straight answers about what the fuck really happened during that chaotic hospital closure in 1995. Local authorities still dismiss the sightings as hoaxes or misidentifications. Probably just a homeless person, they'll tell you. Maybe a bear walking upright. But the witnesses keep coming forward, and their stories keep matching up in ways that are hard to bullshit your way out of. The underground tunnel systems from the old hospital, most were filled in, but a few urban explorers say some sections are still accessible if you know where to look. Whether anything or anyone is still using them is anyone's guess. What really gets me in the ass is how this whole story connects to something bigger. Industrial contamination, government cover-ups, institutional abuse. It's all there, documented in black and fucking white and undeniable. The huge question is whether these creatures are the result of all that negligence and secrecy. So I'll leave you with this haunting thought. If the frog people are real, if they're still out there in those Connecticut woods, are they a warning of what happens when we ignore the consequences of our actions? Or are they simply living proof that some consequences never truly go away? If you think frog legs taste like chicken, tap that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on more of my fucked up commentary. And besides, I really do appreciate it. So, what do you think? Do you think the frog people are inbreeding? Or victims of government bullshit? Or a combination of those things? Let me know down in the comments. And if you're ready to crank it up to 11, that join button's got your name on it. For just $2.99, you can have my back in a huge way. Until next time, y'all keep it real, keep it chill, and stay creepy! Catch you on the flip. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are the real beast.